roof of the aircraft tears away, and within seconds, the cabin is exposed directly to the open sky. What could possibly cause an airplane to lose its roof while flying? Had the aircraft collided with something? Was there an explosion inside the cabin? Had the pilots exceeded the aircraft's speed limits? Aluminium alloys transformed aviation, but every engineering material has a weakness. The Aloha Airlines incident completely changed aircraft maintenance practices. It's not just the size of wing that matters, it's also. Hello everyone, this is Ruhi here and welcome to Cross Section. So the idea behind this channel is that every object around us has a story hidden beneath its surface. And most of the time, guess what? We never notice it. But seriously, every crack, every failure, and even every breakthrough has a reason waiting to just be discovered. So at Cross Section, we go beneath the surface, not just to understand what happened, but to uncover why it happened. Because every failure leaves behind a lesson, and every story has another layer waiting to be revealed. So let's get started. Imagine you're sitting on an airplane cruising at over 700 kilometers per hour. The flight is routine, passengers are talking, flight attendants are serving drinks. Everything seems perfectly normal. Then suddenly, a deafening explosion echoes through the cabin. The roof of the aircraft tears away, and within seconds, the cabin is exposed directly to the open sky. Loose objects are sucked out of the airplane. Passengers struggle to breathe as hurricane force winds rush through the cabin. Miraculously, the pilots managed to land the aircraft safely. This was Aloha Airlines Flight 243 flying between the Hawaiian Islands in 1988. The aircraft survived, but one flight attendant lost her life and dozens of passengers were injured. So, what could possibly cause an airplane to lose its roof while flying? Let's investigate. When investigators examined the aircraft, several possibilities came to mind. Had the aircraft collided with something? Was there an explosion inside the cabin? Had the pilots exceeded the aircraft's speed limits? Was it a manufacturing defect? Or had corrosion slowly weakened the fuselage? But the investigation revealed something surprising. The aircraft hadn't been damaged by one unusually severe flight. Instead, it had been accumulating microscopic damage during thousands of completely normal flights. Fatigue was the primary failure mechanism, which means it was repeatedly subjected to loads over a long period of time. But it had been accelerated by corrosion, which again means that this fatigue, combined with effects of corrosion on the material of the aircraft, along with the aircraft's aging structure, led to its failure. That sounds really technical. So, to break that down, we first need to understand how an aircraft fuselage works. Now, an aircraft cabin is essentially a pressurized cylinder. At cruising altitude, the air outside the aircraft is too thin for humans to breathe comfortably. So the cabin is pressurized to create a safe environment for passengers. Every time the aircraft climbs, the cabin pressure increases, and every time it descends, the pressure decreases again. This causes the fuselage to expand and contract by tiny amounts during every flight. The movement is incredibly small, often only fractions of a millimeter, and passengers never notice it. But the aluminium skin of the aircraft experiences this loading cycle every single flight. And over the lifetime of an aircraft, that can mean tens of thousands of pressurization cycles. Aluminium alloys transformed aviation. They are lightweight, strong, corrosion resistant, and easy to manufacture. Without aluminium alloys, modern air travel would be almost impossible. But every engineering material has a weakness. Unlike many steels, Aluminium alloys never truly stop accumulating fatigue damage. Even when the repeated stresses are relatively small, enough cycles can eventually produce microscopic cracks. And this phenomenon is known as metal fatigue. Imagine bending a paper clip. One bend doesn't break it, neither do two or three, but keep bending it back and forth, and eventually it snaps. Not because any single bend was particularly large, but because the damage slowly built up over time. In fact, if you think about it, this is like saying the last stroke of the hammer breaks the stone, like that proverb, something like that. And that's exactly what happened to the airline. Every flight left behind an almost invisible amount of damage. Individually, those flights were harmless, but together, they slowly weakened the structure. The aircraft involved in Flight 243 had spent years flying short island hopping routes across Hawaii. Unlike long haul aircraft, which may complete only one or two flights each day, this aircraft performed numerous short flights daily. That meant far more takeoffs, landings, and pressurization cycles than engineers originally expected. Tiny cracks began forming around many of the rivet holes joining the aluminium skin. One tiny crack wasn't dangerous, but thousands of flights later, many small cracks had appeared side by side. Eventually, those neighboring cracks joined together, creating one much larger crack. Engineers call this phenomena multiple side damage. During one completely routine flight, the weakened fuselage simply couldn't withstand that normal cabin pressure anymore. And once the cracks joined together, the remaining aluminium could no longer carry the load. And that is why a large section of the aircraft's roof ripped away almost instantaneously. This incident highlighted one of the most important characteristics of aluminium. Failure wasn't caused by a single overload. The aircraft wasn't flying too fast. It wasn't struck by anything. Instead, failure resulted from millions of tiny loading cycles that accumulated over many years. And that is the essence of metal fatigue. It's easy to imagine that materials fail because of one huge force. But fatigue teaches us something very different. Sometimes failure isn't caused by one bad day, it's caused by thousands of perfectly ordinary days. The Aloha Airlines incident completely changed aircraft maintenance practices. Inspection procedures became far more rigorous, and engineers introduced improved methods for detecting microscopic fatigue cracks before they became dangerous. Aircrafts operating on high cycle routes received additional inspection requirements. Design philosophies also evolved towards damage tolerant engineering, assuming that small cracks will eventually form and ensuring that the structure remains safe until they can be detected and repaired. The lesson wasn't that aluminium is a poor material. In fact, aluminium remains one of the most important materials in aviation. The real lesson was that engineers hadn't chosen the wrong material. They simply discovered one of its most important limitations. Aluminium's remarkable combination of low weight and high strength made modern aviation possible. But it also taught engineers that materials don't always fail because of one enormous force. Sometimes, it's the smallest forces repeated thousands of times that leave behind invisible damage. Because in engineering, it's not just the size of load that matters, it's also how many times the material has to carry it. And that brings us to the end of this story. Was there something about the story that maybe surprised you? Or is there another engineering mystery you've always wanted to know about? Whatever it is, I'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section below. And remember, if you're someone who loves to understand or is trying to figure out the hidden science behind engineering, don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss out on the next episode of Cross Section. Looking forward to seeing you then.